Labeling Requirements. Part 5. Proper labeling of chemicals in the workplace. All chemical shipping containers must be labeled with GHS-compliant shipping labels. They must include the product identifier, the signal word, danger, or caution, the hazard statement, precautionary statements, pictograms, and the responsible party contact information. The person responsible for shipping or receiving chemicals must verify these labels are in place. The GHS standard established 9 different pictograms for describing chemical hazards. The relevant pictograms must be on the shipping label. Pictograms may also be a part of your workplace labeling system. Here are the 9 pictograms. Health hazard for chemicals that are harmful to health. This pictogram indicates the substance is flammable. The exclamation point indicates the chemical is an irritant or it is toxic. The gas cylinder means that the chemical is a compressed gas. The substance, and hand, getting an acid burn represents a corrosive. The exploding bomb means that the chemical is explosive or reactive. The flaming O represents an oxidizer, which is a chemical that other fuels require to burn. The dying fish means that the chemical is an environmental toxin. And the skull and crossbones indicates that the chemical is a poison. These pictograms are an important part of the hazard communication system. Get familiar with them. You will see them in the workplace frequently. All chemical containers in the workplace must be labeled. There are 2 methods allowed for chemical labeling. You can use the information from the shipping label, or you can use the product identifier that matches the safety data sheet, plus words, pictures, symbols, or a combination that provide information on the hazards of the chemical. Every chemical, even common cleaners, must be labeled. We will take a close look at each of these labeling methods. Using the information from the shipping label is the easiest method for chemical labeling. It is not as subjective as the other method, and it meets OSHA requirements. It also provides comprehensive chemical information to employees. Companies also have the option of creating their own labeling system, as long as it complies with OSHA. Here is how OSHA describes the criteria for custom labels. They must have product identifier and words, pictures, symbols, or combination thereof, which provide at least general information regarding the hazards of the chemicals, and which, in conjunction with the other information immediately available to employees under the Hazard Communication Program, will provide employees with the specific information regarding the physical and health hazards of the hazardous chemical. While this method does give the employer more flexibility, it opens the labeling method up to interpretation, as to if it is sufficient to protect employees. Let's take a look at a few examples. For this example we are using ammonia, and using the shipping label information as the method of labeling. We start with the product identifier, which matches the name on the safety data sheet. We then add the 4 pictograms listed on the SDS. Next is the signal word, which is danger. After that we add the hazard statements, the precautionary statements, and then the manufacturer contact information. Now we have a complete and compliant label. Note, by using the shipping label method, we did not have to make any judgment calls about what should be on the label. Now let's build a custom label for the same chemical. The only specific requirement for custom labels is that they must include the product identifier. We have added the relevant pictograms, leaving out the environmental toxin pictogram, as it is not relevant to this work area. We kept the signal word and the hazard statements. In order to emphasize the PPE, we added PPE pictures that list the specific requirements for personal protection. We also added a section highlighting the required first aid. The manufacturer's contact information is not included, because it can be found on the safety data sheet. Now the question is this a compliant label? It may be compliant, if this information, combined with the written program and safety training, communicates all the information that is required to provide adequate protection for employees. Labels do not have to be fixed to the chemical container. They can be placed on signs, placards, process sheets, batch tickets, operating procedures, or other means, as long as it identifies the container it is applicable to, and contains the required hazard information. Portable chemical containers do not have to be labeled if the chemical was transferred from a properly labeled container, and the chemical will be used immediately by the person who performed the transfer. Examples of this are pouring cleaners into a spray bottle, or transferring paint to a metal can or roller tray. It is important to remember that as soon as a portable container is left unattended, it becomes a secondary container, and labeling requirements apply. This is a common OSHA violation. While unlabeled portable containers are permitted, it is usually a good idea to just make sure every chemical container is labeled. National Fire Prevention Association labels are often found on chemical containers. These are for fire prevention and emergency response. They do not, by themselves, meet the requirements for hazard communication labeling. Now for a quick review on labeling requirements. Chemical shipping containers must have a GHS shipping label. Secondary containers must have either the information from the shipping container label, or a hazard communication compliant label. Portable containers do not require a label, as long as the chemical in the container was transferred from a labeled container, and the person who performed the transfer maintains control of the container.